have a question. I love this, asking the audience questions, because it gives us a sense of the room. Joe tends to launch in without getting a sense of the room. We're going to give him a sense of the room. First of all, how many Morning Joe viewers here? Any? Oh, okay. All right, that's good. That's a good beginning. Well, we love being here. We were here obviously 4 years ago. Our show was basically launched in the snows of Iowa, but I believe it was New Hampshire where we found our voice.
Yeah.
Might it have been?
No doubt about it.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. I remember well.
It was really an incredible start for the show, and where we launched everything, where Tim Russert blessed us along the way. I'll let you tell that story. But it is so incredible to be back 4 years later, once again, covering the primaries.
And you know, we always get asked the question, should the presidential contest start in Iowa and New Hampshire? And the answer is not yes. For us, it is hell yes. And the reason why is because you're just such great people. Really getting my literature very soon. The reason why is, and we saw it in Iowa, we see it in New Hampshire as well, people are so engaged in the process. You can't just run 30-second ads launched by super PACs with nameless contributors, where you blindside candidates and you can't ever trace the money back until it's too late. I mean, you're going to find out who is funding all of those 30-second commercials that are attacking all the candidates that have no names on it. Do you know where you're going to find that out? Yeah, a couple weeks from now. Isn't that convenient? The race could be over before you find out who is funding all the attack ads that are being launched by the super PACs. The great thing about Iowa and the great thing about New Hampshire is it still matters who comes to your door, who knocks on the door, who plants the yard sign in your... You know, when I was running for Congress, if I saw somebody put a billboard up against me, I'd just laugh. Billboards don't matter. So you just burn your money in the middle of the road. It's the yard signs. You know, when I first ran, nobody knew who I was. I had no name ID. I was running against a 16-year incumbent named Earl Hutto, good old Earl Hutto. But I wanted to go up and I wanted to make a difference. So even though I'd never been in politics, I didn't know anybody in politics, I remember going to tell my parents. Went into the kitchen and said, Mom, Dad, I'm running against Earl Hutto. I want to make a difference. And I remember my dad, God rest his soul, looked at me for about 5 minutes, looked down at his feet. In the corner, my mom was gently weeping. And I remember my dad looked up, and I will never forget to this day what he said to me when I told him I had the guts to run against Earl Hutto. He said, that's great, Joey, but I'm voting for Earl. And so being the positive type A guy I am, I figured it this way. I was running against a 16-year incumbent. Nobody knew who I was, right? I didn't even know anybody in Tallahassee or Washington. And yet, in the first house that I campaigned in, I split it right down the middle, 50-50. And so then I went, I think I eventually even got my dad's vote. But I seriously, from that point on, I knocked on about 10,000 doors. I planted yard signs all over the district, and I ended up winning with 62% of the vote. And I was the first Republican elected in my district since 1873. Yeah, and they hung the last one that they sent up to Washington. So that wasn't easy to do. But it was door to door. It was one handshake at a time, and it was one yard sign at a time, and I never had to take a poll. You know why? Because I was in people's living rooms and around their kitchen tables every single day of that campaign. I knew what was coming down the pike before anybody else. Now, if this primary process started in California, or New York, or my home state of Florida, guess what? That would never happen. Would never happen. But it does happen because this system works, and it starts in the right places. And I think everything works out very well in the wash. So, I just wanted to say, though, because I've talked too much here, Mika. And
Really?
Yeah.
No.
And Mika always says, you just go. But speaking of being the only Republican to win since 1873, we also like to ask this question, just so I know how isolated I am. How many Republicans do we have in the crowd? Hey, look at this. This doesn't usually happen. There are at least 3. Thank you very much. It's like a family reunion. But how many Democrats? Okay. Yeah. Independents. There you go, baby.
Great crowd.
That's what I'm talking about.
I love this crowd.
It seems to be split.
So if you watch the show, you'll sometimes see that we don't agree on everything. Just once in a while.
Yeah.
But one thing I did discover, hearing that story about his decision to run for Congress, is that we do have something fundamental in common. Our parents are tough.
And crazy.
Really tough.
And crazy. You know, I don't know if you ever saw Dr. Brzezinski and me go back and forth.
I told you not to have him on the show.
Told me not to have him on the show.
I warned you a million
Warned
times.
me a million times.
I told you about my mother.
She is crazy.
I told you about my brother. Yeah.
So the first time I had Dr. Brzezinski on the show, we're talking about Middle East and the 2000 peace accords which fell apart, and I was playing them like the rest of the free world on Yasser Arafat. He looked at me and he said, "You know, you are stunningly superficial." Mika slides under the desk. And this was my first brush with the Brzezinskis. My next was actually over at Tim Russard's Christmas party in 2007. And so we go over there, and I meet Ian Brzezinski, who worked for the Bush Pentagon.
Neocon.
Big neocon. And I keep talking to him about how great Mika is. And he finally has enough, he just cuts me off and he goes, "You know, Mika had the lowest SAT score in the history of Williams College, right?"
I did.
And I looked at him and I said, "What a bastard." Right. And so about a month later, Mika has a book in Weird Politics and Prose in Washington, D.C.
Huge crowd. Lovely.
Now, it was a lovely crowd.
It was a good
and
event.
You know what? It was a
until...
moving event, too, because Mika actually wrote the book and dedicated it to her mother. Right? All things at once. Dedicated my mom who taught me all these things. They make you cry. So this was big night because Mrs. Brzezinski actually was coming to the event. So she comes in 15 minutes late. And as she's walking, I said, "Miss Brzezinski, please come front. Have a seat in front." So she comes up and everybody's clapping. They know this is going to be a special moment, right? So she sits in the front row and I turn and I say, "Mushka, please tell the audience something about Mika. Something about your lovely daughter that they don't know." So Mushka stood up and she thought about it for a second. She said, I got it. You know, Mika had the lowest SAT I'm like, what's with these people?
They can't let it go.
They can't help themselves.
Okay, they're very smart people, my brothers and my parents.
They're also a little crazy, though. Talk about, I know you hate telling this story, but I'm just going to sit down and listen and take it all in.
No,
yes,
please.
Talk about when the Polish hillbillies, as you call your family, came to Washington. Your dad ran, by the way, we're a little different, our backgrounds. Mika's father ran U.S. foreign policy for 4 years, right? My dad ran Little League baseball teams. But anyway, while your dad, so while he was running U.S. foreign policy, you invited the Pope over, and you had the President of China over, and, but there was nothing like the night that they invited Pamela Harriman over. Tell us about it.
Right. Well, my parents are the type of people who do everything themselves. So when we moved to Washington, it really was like the Polish hillbillies had come to town, because we literally packed everything into our station wagon and drove there and grew crops, hunted wild game, as well as mixing with the Washington bubble, the inner circle at the White House. And that often had collisions at times. My brothers would drag home deer. That's a good afternoon, by the way, for my father to get, 10-point buck. But I'd come home and like Bambi would be hanging off the tree. If I had a friend I was trying to make, this is not a good way to open doors with people. And in fact, my mother, who's an incredible artist and works with a chainsaw and does huge huge pieces, wouldn't even fit in this room. A winch, 2,000-pound pieces, cuts them herself. Still to this day, she's 80 years old, doing incredible sculptures. But she would balance her work as an artist, a mother, and the wife of a national security advisor, and also Eastern European immigrants. So she would be dragging these deer in and gutting them in the kitchen, and sometimes she'd be really busy. One day, she dragged one in, got busy, so she threw it in the bathroom off the kitchen, closed the door, opened the window, threw it in the tub, and that was a refrigerator, not air conditioning. That was a refrigerator in her book, and left it there for 6 hours. It happened to be when I brought the coolest girl in school home for a play date. Sarah Height, long legs, blonde hair, all the boys loved her, Jordache jeans, comb in the back pocket, feathered hair, fabulous. I wanted to be her friend, but she asked if she could use the bathroom. She opens the door and there's Bambi in the tub, like hanging out, tongue hanging out. I heard the most blood-curdling scream come from that bathroom, and I knew I would never see her again, ever. But there was another moment, an evening, where the disconnect between my mother and the rest of society came to pass before my eyes, and that was when we had Pamela Harriman over for dinner, and a whole bunch of other ambassadors and senators and thought leaders. And a few days before, my mother picked me up from school. I went to an exclusive private school for girls, and she would show up in her overalls with sawdust in her hair and all over her jumpsuit that she would wear the same one every day. But this time, there was blood all over it. She's just like, get in the car, we gotta go. So I get in the car. I don't even let that faze me. That doesn't surprise a kid like me, growing up in that house. But I did feel a presence in the car, like maybe somebody was with us. And I look back, and there's a hoof,